Hello, I'm Vigil, and this is my stream journal. The date is 5/13. The time is 1:50. Um, I just finished planting my seeds for my uh, peppers. I'm growing a whole bunch of peppers and pickled for, let me show you. Growing a whole bunch of peppers for the purpose of making an essential pepper oil. They're the world's hottest peppers. I don't have the package with me right now. The normal Scoville rating of a jalapeno is like 10,000. These are like 10 million. Um, yeah, so that's pretty cool. It'll take me maybe 2 to 3 months till harvest, I think, if I read the instructions correctly. I've never really grown anything like this before, so I'm very excited. I um I got a book on horticulture. I'm gonna study it a little bit, and um, yeah. So my A-list program is going good. Today I went to the gym. I worked out. I jogged for 15 minutes, like a mile and a half. I did some weights. I ate well. Today, overall, was a good day. I had a temporary disordered thinking period where one of my former friends got in a car accident, and I was just thinking about it in a really weird way, an unpleasant way. Um, and then my internet went out for a second, so I Googled online to see if anyone else's internet was going out, and it made it sound like a whole bunch of people's internet was going out. And the only time the internet goes out, like the telecommunications system of the globe has like a 99.99% uptime compared to like that's more planes crash than the internet goes down. And a large scale collapse of the internet is indication of something bad happening. So I Googled power outages, and there's a few outages, not much. I live next to a military base, and I heard choppers taking off. Disordered thinking, and jumping to conclusions. It seemed like something was happening, but then my internet came back on. Well, I was searching the internet after it came back on because it was out for maybe 5 minutes, which is just weird. The phone system doesn't go out. Like I said, like if you read reports about the telecommunication system, it's always on. Like it has the highest up rating than anything else, or like run rate, or the ability to keep itself operating, because there's thousands upon thousands of people who maintain it, and it's just really well designed with redundancy and whatnot. Um, anyways, other than that, today was a good day. I think. I assume it was because I'm still alive. Not to say that in a dark way. I meant it like any day above ground is a good day. Which I never understood if that meant like alive, being alive, or like not living it like a mole person, like some sort of Megadeth song. Um, Not a whole lot else is going on. I played guitar for a little bit. I tried improving lyrics, a singing melody combined with a guitar melody that was all played improv. It was terrible, but it's the start of something cool where you learn how to write a point and counterpoint in real time using your voice and guitar while making up lyrics. Um, it's I think it's doable. I think it would take a lot of practice, but it's doable. Um, I need to start prioritizing what I want to study and what I want to read, because I have thousands of books on my in my library. But I start a book and then I stop, and then I start another book and then I stop, and like I have the books that I really want to read outlined and like figured out, but now it's just finding the willpower to read them. I have severe aversion to reading, like something you read out of Brave New World. They say that in the book Brave New World, the kids who are designed to live in the city, when they're little, they're shown flowers, and when they start to crawl towards them, they're shocked with electricity, and a loud noise blares until they form an aversion to it. I have a pain aversion to reading because of how I learned hooked on phonics when I was little. Um, gave me headaches for my entire life, I think. And then I also have ADHD because of mechanical application of stimulation when I was little to myself without realizing what I was doing, developing a compulsion which affected my frontal cortex executive functioning, um, essentially making it so I have to be constantly aroused in order to be able to focus on stuff. But it's also why I gravitate towards women because I'm just it's like it's literally biology essentially, like neurochemistry, neurobiology, where like I trained my mind to be to have a really weak executive functioning system unless it's aroused, and when it's aroused it focuses on that which is arousing. It's why like I'm intelligent, I think, because I'm a sapiosexual. Like conversation, um, new theories, scientific theories, they all excite me, like arouse me in the sense, maybe not sexual, but like um, activation of the executive function system in your frontal cortex, which is responsible for focusing and task delegating and reading or and stuff like that. Like interesting concepts grab my attention and they excite me, but so do women. So like all I need is a sweet teacher, hot female who scaffolds me into the highest heights I can go. I haven't found that yet though. Another cool thing is that my asocial reality that I was in, where like every now and then I'd kind of go into like an Asperger's mode, which I think was from amphetamine, ADHD medication abuse. Not abuse, just overprescribed. Um, it made me Asperger's like because I started it during a developmental phase when I was 15. The argument that says Adderall makes you angry, I don't think that's completely accurate. Like, um, kids with ADHD have trouble regulating their emotions because we can't process our emotions like normal. Um, when I was on ADHD medication, I was the same amount of angry as when I wasn't on it. And then after meditation on it, I actually became very calm and peaceful until I started getting fucked with, like by other people. And then after just a long enough time period, I had repressed it, my anger for so long, not being able to voice it normally, like most people can with calm, rational debate and airing of grievances. I don't know if people can normally do that, but it's what I can do now. Um, I think that the treatment of ADHD for kids should be a biofeedback game system where you, using intelligent algorithms, machine learning, and biofeedback combined with a training application like a puzzle game, you slowly grow that portion of their brain until the neuroplasticity overtakes and they've grown their attention span from a couple of seconds to a half minute to a minute. And we're also teaching them therapeutic like anger management, emotional regulation, teaching them the words for their emotions is super important. Like the one thing you should do for your kid based upon the developmental psychology I've read is between the ages of like 0 to like 6, just show them novelty, nothing but novelty constantly, like and have words for everything, rather than saying green, red, blue, have 40 different shades of red, each with its own like word, and just run them, like just let let constant novelty be in their environment, because kids at that age aren't really learning connections. They're just inputting all this data into their mind that will then later, during the ages of 6 through 12, during object oriented reality, where they start to form the schemas and the heuristics, laws, and the language and linguistic modeling and stuff, secondary processing, it'll draw on that early 6 year developmental period. Um, so yeah, like they took a this is so it's a test, or it's not a test, it's a experiment that they did, and I reference it a lot. So essentially, they took two groups of kids, one from the bush, like in Africa, and one from a city in New York, and they said, "Here's a color wheel," and it had like a whole bunch of color circles in a circle, so like a circle and a bunch of circles. and all but one of the hues was the same color. They said to the kids, which one is the different color? And the kids from Africa who live in like the wilderness, where you have to know all the different shades of green because of the high probability that a slight hue change can get you killed, had the easiest ability of finding which color was outlined or which color was different. The kids from the city who didn't grow up with that stuff couldn't tell because you actually need a word or symbol in order to recognize the slight difference of the hue because it associates with a pathway in your brain and your neurological structures. So, what this means though is it can be applied to other aspects. Like if you don't have a word for something, like the ship on the horizon, then theoretically you may not be able to see it. Your mind is constantly filling in and editing out data. Massive amounts of computation are happening. They say it's like 1 million frames per second in the brain. Um, like uh, this applies though to emotions and like if you don't teach kids as many words as possible for their emotions and the nuances of their emotions, and will at the same time teach them like regulation of these emotions, processing them, teaching them self-defense mechanisms that are executively controlled. So rather than repression, temporary suppression that then is slowly subliminated while it's processed instead of repressing, burying, and then outbursts that are uncontrollable. Like it's just basic stuff. And but if you teach kids all the nuances for emotions, what they mean, like um, what what the connotation of a slight nuance in like context, and when like I don't know, I know what I'm trying to say. I don't know why I said I don't know. Self defense mechanism, distraction. I'm not sure. Anyways, so when they're growing up between the ages of 0 and 6, repetition is not really. I don't think repetition is a good idea. Like not in the sense of like forcing them to sit down and do something that they don't want to do. I think stifles them or inhibits them. I was forced to do like reading and hooked on phonics for hours at a time while I was crying, and it made it impossible to do homework for the next 12 years until I got Adderall and started doing meditation and stuff. Uh, I think that there's a Halsey song. I'm a big fan of Halsey. I think she's cool. She's bipolar, so it's 1 minute she's being kind to you because she needs emotional support. Next minute she's hurt, so she's trying to destroy the object relationship and push you away. And you can see it in her lyrics and music. Take off the bracelet, which is a reference to sleeping with someone else, or basically saying she'll follow you to the graveyard or whatever. Like it's basic electric complex stuff combined with bipolarism or maybe borderline. And everyone's scared of borderline because they split really hard. So you have like splitting in schizoid position and depressive position, where you're subliminating, feeling guilt, and rational and healthy without delusions. Somebody who's so far in schizoid position, which our entire society seems to be moving towards, their memories change instantly, like without them realizing it. So they love you undyingly, and then suddenly they feel scared or they perceive subconsciously like they're going to be hurt in an emotional or physical way. So instantly they hate you and they lash out, they're screaming, they say the most horrible shit they can think of. And the whole point of it is to destroy that relationship so it can't hurt them. Like the father figure, and I'm using the electric complex and borderline, like the father figure who doesn't understand that when a child is upset, you have to maintain, you have to stay in the room and show that you're a stable object that can be, without fighting back, without trying to hurt them back or argue or rationalize, just let them see that like they can't destroy the relationship, and then teach them rupture repair and disillusionment. So like it's the rupture repair problem in borderline. Like they don't comprehend all the time, and they feel like they can't feel guilt really because they're in schizoid position. But I'm getting kind of deep in the rabbit hole in this one. So you have the object relationship in schizoid position that like suddenly they feel threatened, so suddenly they never wanted anything to do with you, they never liked you, they were just, and their memories mutate to actually like reinforce this belief that they're telling themselves, they're deceiving themselves unintentionally as a self-defense mechanism, because a part of their brain has never developed the rational skill sets, or they're just so far in schizoid position that they don't feel guilt, remorse, and they're splitting. And splitting is like fetishes. Like so if you're masturbating and you have a fetish, as soon as the masturbation period is over, you suddenly feel remorse and guilt and shame, and like it's because you were splitting. Your mind was literally going off a secondary pathway, like a second module rate. And like for me, I don't have a lot of fetishes. I have splitting, which I don't enjoy like at all. um, but um, so teaching kids words, essentially, to get back to what I was talking about, like between the ages of 0 and 6, they're just intaking data, and their mind is still growing, like their brain is growing pathways that will later, between the ages of 6 and 12, be pruned. And then for the rest of they say your brain doesn't stop developing until you're 28. That's stupid. It never stops developing, otherwise you wouldn't be able to learn, because learning is your brain growing and pruning pathways, growing higher efficiency, of course, pruning at a different rate. And yes, the chemicals that affect the rate of the growth of the neuron synaptic structures, or like growth hormone, neuronal pathway growth. They're not hormones, but neurotransmitters. Maybe they're hormones. I don't know. I can't remember, like LMA or something like that. I can't remember the acronym for it. Like, yes, the concentration changes, but you can learn a new trick in your 80s. So like your brain never stops modulating due to neuroplasticity. Um, but between the ages of 0 and 6, they go through like Freud's phases of like pre or infantile sexuality, which is essentially just them associating the various components or sensory like zones with pleasure, or and like they learn um, how to like self-defense mechanisms that are natural, like emotional repression to prevent the sensation of total obliteration. um, they repress, like, like they just learn all these things like naturally. But I truly believe that like if you wanted to really maximize the intelligence of a child and their ability to perceive and experience reality, their bioshell or whatever quality of life, then I think that like exposing them to just constant novelty is how they really develop that. And like I everyone knows the stereotypical phase that children develop where they start to learn what the question why is, or like, or what is why, like, like um why is that so, why is that so, why is that so, after every time you answer them. And I think adults do a real disservice to their children when they start to say, well, just because, like it's a huge, I think, nurturing the like imagination, the dream state of like I don't know. I guess you should nurture the curiosity that's holy, as someone called it once, holy curiosity. You should nurture it indefinitely, and like uh, kids will. You should role model for your kids. You don't simply just force them to jump through hoops while you're yelling training words at them like some parents do, like the Tiger Mom or whatever. I haven't read the book. I just watched a video of it, and this had a point. I digress, and then I segue, and then I tangent. And when I'm writing on the computer, I can just go back and read what I wrote and go, oh yeah, and go back to what I was talking about. When I'm doing videos, I have like 5 different logic lines, progressions going on concurrently. Oh, so the wheel within a wheel, teaching kids the words for their emotions, teaching them the connotations of it, teaching them how to read facial expressions, teaching them how to, like, theory of mind, teaching them how to understand things that aren't spoken aloud, but which are like tacit, uh, tacit communications, and teaching them like context, narrations of reality, narrations of self, without solidifying them on any one real topic. Like, I think that this, I'm going to get a lot of crap, or I'm going to get a lot of people who disagree with me on this one, but I think that after a specific age, teaching children about hell, not as like a threat or as a way to coerce them, but simply as like a reality that like humanity has lived with for thousands of years, I think produces in your kid after a while resiliency and strength. Like, you teach them the concept of hell, and you teach them the concept of heaven when they turn, like, I don't know. I think it depends on the intellectual and emotional development of the child, which is case dependent. But like, when you teach them about hell, you teach them, their imagination will take over, and like they'll be tormented by it. But that's essentially how you teach them resiliency on a level that like is really like, it's, I don't know. Christians do it, Muslims do it, Jews don't really do it. The Jews have Sheol, but it's just a place of like rest or darkness. The Hindus have it. Like, all the world religions have hell, and humanity has been teaching their young about hell since the beginning. And like, I'm not necessarily opposed to it. Like, my teenage years and my like 20s were really like a childlike faith in hell, essentially. And like, it's, without it, I would not have a lot of the character traits that I really admire in myself. So I guess you teach kids hell as a concept, and then as they begin to process it and integrate it into their younger psyche, which will be a foundation, you teach them the skills, which is both like Viktor Frankl's man's search for meaning ideas of like teaching them that you can overcome anything if you just simply have some sort of reason for it. Um, Teaching them coping strategies, resiliency, all of that. It's like children have to feel pain. I know I started with peppers, but I somehow got into this topic. I think about it a lot, and I write about it a lot because I use child developmental psychology to heal myself. Because like Freud says, the child remains. Um, but like, you teach them resiliency through allowing them to, in graded doses that are scaffold, endure much greater and greater amounts of pain. You don't inflict pain on them. You don't allow harmful pain that has no purpose to come to them. But you don't lie to them in the sense of like, if the dog dies, he didn't just go to the farm. The dog has passed away, and you teach them about death. You take them to a graveyard. You take them to a nursing home. You take them to a hospice, and you show them the reality of death. Tantra does this with their, can't like with their initiates. Um, you teach them resiliency, and while teaching them mortality. I remember the day I became self-aware of my mortality. I was driving in the car with my mom. I started crying, and like, um, I was fixated on death most of my life, and like, it serves me now. Like, it serves me in a way that oblivious to oblivion doesn't. Um, but like, you can't hurt your kids. Like you can't force pain onto them. You can say, "Do you want to learn how to ride a bike now?" knowing that they're going to get hurt, not with the intention of forcing them to endure pain, but like, when you once they get to a certain age, logical concepts suddenly become palpable, and it's a period of their development that like, Um, I don't know. This is up for debate, discussion. I think we should look past the demagoguery of the mother bear philosophy, which essentially says that like the mother is so scared of her child being hurt that she takes on this delusional belief system that she can protect them from anything, and like she does this through being ultra like um, violent towards any threat. When like in reality, like when you have a child, there's a probability that they'll get killed before they reach a certain age. Like it's one of the risks that you have to accept as always plausible. You mitigate the risk and you try to prevent it. But when you have a kid, there's always a probability that they can get killed or pass away or have an ailment, and like um, it's something you have to accept, and you can't live in denial about it, because if you do, you'll start subconsciously counter transferring into the child a fear of mortality, which they themselves need from you. You need to show them that it's something you accept, you live with, you mitigate, you do your best to stay alive by making good common sense choices. But mortality is a very real actuality of human existence, and like it should serve them in the sense of giving them a philosophy that lives in the moment, planning for tomorrow, living for today. Um, but you don't inflict pain onto your kid. But if they have a phobia, you teach them how to overcome it, which requires them to endure an amount of suffering in the process of exposure therapy. Um, like discomfort is something that needs to be learned to be tolerated. And like, I watched this movie about this. It was on Netflix. This young girl has a fear of drowning in water, so her Russian father, who's like a billionaire oligarch, who's wise, I think, takes her to a lake when it's frozen, cracks the ice, and then has her submerge under it. And then when she later gets into like a bus car crash, I think it's called OA, but later when she gets in a car crash, the bus veers into the lake. She's able to swim out while all the other kids are cowering in fear. And like, I think hell, to come back onto it, hell as a concept, like it serves the purpose of man. Like, if you fear being tortured and you're taught about the concept of hell and you meditate on it, meditate, contemplate with introspection, um, really using your imagination to go wild with it, over time it deconditions you to the fear of pain. Like mortification for my religion due to a gaslighting, what with deluded thinking due to body dysmorphia and a gaslighting religion. I I know it scares a lot of people in our nation and our culture and this society in general, because we don't have a lot of self mortification in this period of time. But like in the ancient world, it was pretty common. People would self mortify. Like there's I think Oedipus cuts both his eyes out after he kills his father. Um, like the saints of the early Christian church grew up in a period where they would be tortured to death for claiming Christianity. And like, it's our modern society, our spiritual suffering, if you're a Christian living in America, is a feeling of being persecuted, some light mocking or heavy mocking from the secular community, and just constant seduction towards anything. Like they call it a Christian nation, most sinful nation, seduction wise, to have ever existed. Like instant pleasure whenever you want it. Like you look at the TV and it's just naked ads for beer, and like it's just not, it's not a real good understanding of what he said when he said, do you like when they asked to be on the right and the left, and he's like, do you have the ability to drink from this cup that I'm drinking from? And he was talking about the baptism of suffering. And like our country, our nation, the Christian Bible Belt prosperity shit has no comprehension of it. I kind of do, but it's mostly intellectual. Like my eye mortification, it was painful, but it wasn't getting nailed to a cross, I guess. The like um and then so like um teaching kids hell for the purpose of teaching them resiliency by teaching them how to overcome hell is what I'm trying to talk about. Like I guess I digress, segue, but um so yeah, this I guess this is subconsciously rounding about to why I'm growing peppers. I've decided for my ritual or like rite of passage or just the common ritual, meditation ritual, and I'm going to make a concentrated strain of the world's hottest pepper and then do a dip on my tongue or a dab on my tongue just to induce searing pain without it being harmful because it's not going to scar me, it's not going to hurt me or anything. It's not to self harm for the purpose of like I'm bad, I masochistically hurt myself because I'm bad or I'm sad or anything. It's more along the lines of like a tribe in Africa making bullet ant gloves and that bite you until you're in like a state of septic shock for the purpose of bringing you into a better understanding of the tribe, which is one where you have endured a horrible pain and now you don't fear pain in the future. And so it's that's the purpose of growing these peppers. And somehow I segued and tangented my way into that. But so teach your kids when they're young all the words for all the emotions, teach them the reactions, the and like just just fill their life with novelty until they reached about the age of 6 when they start getting object oriented. They have the law of conservation understood. They start developing their sexuality represses, um, and by the time they reach 15 they should be like able to live on their own. In our culture it's not really like that because we've really screwed with like the developmental pathways with like our schooling system. um, we've really screwed with like being progressive but like blocky and like not really case dependent without serious social consequences if the kids don't keep up with the social severe social consequences if the kids don't keep up with like the book reading and stuff. Like being dropped back a grade just destroys kids. um, and like the age of 18 somehow being the age of voting and independence while like 21 is drinking. And like you can be drafted at 18 but you can't drink until you're 21. You can kill people in a war for some rich old politician but you can't fucking drink a beer. And like our legal system somehow kids are adults at 18. That's not realistic. Like it should be a like phasing period. Like it should be multiple phases. And one, we shouldn't use coercive violence to force kids into compliance with certain political ideologies like the war on drugs. That's the literal definition of terrorism. To have a community of people drive around with like lights, scaring the shit out of people with threats of violence and horrible for-profit prison systems to coerce their behavior. Literal definition of terrorism. Um, but yeah, so I grew some peppers. I'm growing peppers to make oils that are gonna sear the shit out of my tongue for the purpose of a rite of passage ritual, which ties into teaching kids about hell when they're at the correct developmental age where they can integrate it and then learn resiliency from the contemplation of it rather than repression and suppression. I covered the word like executive functioning for me, how I'm a sapiosexual and why I am a sapiosexual. And yeah, so I guess that's a really long video. That's 35 minutes. Fuck. Yeah, today's went well. Later.